What was supposed to be a celebration, a victory lap for one of the biggest shows on the planet, has somehow turned into a huge controversy. Today, we're going to break down exactly why fans and critics are so fired up about the new behind-the-scenes documentary on the final season of Stranger Things. Wow. I mean, this quote from an online critic really just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures just how intense this whole thing has gotten. This documentary was meant to celebrate the show's creation, but instead, it's basically hands it a megaphone to everyone who felt that the final season was, well, a letdown, and it has kicked off a massive debate online. So that's the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How did a celebratory film cause such a massive fan firestorm? Well, we are going to dive right into the key revelations from this documentary that have been fueling all the drama. And we're going to start with the absolute chaos that was apparently going on inside the writer's room. Okay, so the first major red flag for a lot of viewers was how the documentary showed the writing process. It revealed what seems like a surprisingly, and honestly for many, a very concerningly, chaotic way to approach the grand finale of a beloved series. So get this, according to the footage, the finale wasn't even finished when they started shooting. This apparently led to the creators bickering back and forth about how to end it all, and the only thing they really agreed on was that Eleven would sacrifice herself. Because they didn't have a script, the production teams, we're talking VFX, set design, the whole crew, had to basically improvise and rush their work. And this quote, which is attributed to crew members, just highlights the incredible pressure everyone must have been under. Wing it. Can you imagine? They were essentially building the plane while it was already in the air, trying to land, a global phenomenon. All right, so the process was a mess. But what about the story itself? Let's talk about some of the specific creative choices that critics are saying just broke the show's own rules. For a lot of people watching, this is where things really started to feel off. First up, the big bad himself, the Mind Flayer. Now, we've always known this thing as this creepy, possessive, smoke-like entity, right? Well, apparently that was changed to a more straightforward, physical kaiju monster that the kids could just shoot at. It's a pretty major change to what the monster fundamentally is. And the reason for this change, as they explain it in the documentary? It was incredibly simple. They just needed a big, tangible monster for a big fight scene at the end. Even if, as the critics argue, it completely contradicted the creature's established lore. And it's a similar story with the final battle. The original plan was this epic showdown with an army of all the classic monsters, but that idea got scrapped. The reason given? Demo fatigue. Yep, they were worried that you, the audience, were just tired of seeing Demogorgons. Now this slide really gets to the heart of the disconnect for so many people. On one side, you have the actual history of the show, which is full of brutal deaths and high-stakes violence. And on the other side, you have a statement from the creators saying Stranger Things is not a show that's about killing people. A lot of viewers saw that and thought, so that's it. The main cast has plot armor. And if you thought that was wild, the documentary also, completely by accident, kicked off a very modern kind of controversy. We're talking about an allegation pushed by some really eagle-eyed fans that artificial intelligence was actually used to help write the season. So, did they really use ChatGPT to write the script? What's the deal here? Well, the evidence that fans are pointing to actually comes from the documentary footage itself. It provided some pretty specific clues that have really fueled all this speculation. So internet sleuths went to work, and here's what they spotted. On computers in the writer's room, there were several open browser tabs for ChatGPT. Fans also argued that some of the dialogue, especially the really exposition-heavy stuff, sounded a lot like AI-generated text. They pointed to this recurring sentence structure. It isn't just this, it's this. Okay, so moving on from the main plot and the whole writing process, the documentary also started up criticism about how a bunch of key characters, both new ones and old favorites, and their stories were handled in this final season. First, let's talk about Linda Hamilton. You get a screen legend, an icon, and her storyline was labeled by critics as the most useless plot line in the show. And what's really telling is that she barely got any screen time in the documentary itself, which some people took as a sign that maybe even the creators didn't quite know what to do with her character. And then there's Will Byers' much-anticipated coming-out scene. This was a huge moment for his character. But reports started coming out that the scene was reshot up to 20 times. And yet, the documentary barely even mentioned this pivotal moment, which to some felt like a real lack of commitment to that storyline. And finally, there's this idea of passing the torch. Critics pointed out what they saw as way too much focus on a new, younger generation of characters. A lot of fans felt this happened at the expense of our original heroes, like Lucas, who they argued had very little to actually do in the big finale.
So let's pull all of this together. What's the big takeaway from this wave of criticism? Criticism that was, ironically, sparked by the show's own documentary.
Well, the one theme that just runs through everything is this feeling of a massive disconnect. A disconnect between what the creators wanted to do and what so many fans felt the story, its characters, and its world had earned over all these years. From the rushed writing process to those unsatisfying character arcs, it all seems to point back to that one core complaint. And this whole situation leaves us with a really fascinating, thought-provoking question about entertainment today. In this age of massive, passionate online communities, when a story becomes a global phenomenon like Stranger Things, who really gets to decide how it ends? The creators who dreamed it up, or the audience that made it a legend?